A client once told me, I feel like I'm debating with myself all day long, even over the smallest things, and it's exhausting. I can't shut it off. She wasn't talking about making a major life decision. She was describing what it's like to live with second guessing herself over every choice she had to make, no matter how small, like what to cook for dinner. The battle in her head had taken up permanent residence where she could not escape it anymore. Hi, everyone. I'm Kanchan Kulkarni, and I'm here to help you see the patterns that are keeping you stuck and the freedom that's waiting for you beyond them. So let's dig right in. Now, here's an example of what being stuck in an anxious decision loop looks like. You know what phone you want to buy, but you can't press order. You're hungry and know what meal you want, but you keep changing your mind 3 times before speaking up. You lie awake at night, not because of the noise outside, but because of your brain. It won't stop rehearsing what you should have said hours earlier. From the outside, you look functional. Maybe you're at work, you're with your family, you're talking with friends, but inside, it is complete chaos. So, why does this happen? When someone chips away at your judgment over and over again, the argument doesn't stay between you and them. It becomes internalized. You start doing their work for them. They don't need to tell you you're wrong anymore. You've learned to say that to yourself. One of my clients who I worked with recently had lived this reality for decades. Her husband was charming in public, polite at home, and never raised his voice. But behind that calm exterior was a constant drip of criticism. Let me tell you about the day she came back from lunch with friends and told him how much she had loved the food at the restaurant. Weeks later, he takes her back to the same restaurant, orders the same dishes, and after he has eaten a little of each, he tells her that he could not believe that she liked the food because it was the worst thing that he had ever tasted. Now, he's not shouting or making a scene, just smiles and says, she has no good taste in anything. And he should be the one who should make all their decisions because he knows what's best for himself, her, and the family. And this isn't about the meal. This isn't about a joke. This isn't about telling someone something and saying that, oh, I didn't like this, but I like that, or being honest about their review. This is about judgment. And then he ends that by saying, the only mistake he made was trusting her. He didn't need to scream and shout. But imagine this happening not once, but every day, for months, for years, for decades, every day having your opinion dismissed or highlighted as a flaw. And that kind of repetition, it rewires you. It teaches your brain that decisions are dangerous. So when you are asked to make a decision, you may go into full panic mode like my client, because later on when her husband's sister asked her about a simple restaurant recommendation, she had a full-blown panic attack. This could have been a simple question. Instead, it triggered her in such a way because she thought this was another situation in which she would be humiliated publicly. To the outside world, this looks like weakness. To people who have never lived it, it makes no sense. Why panic over dinner? Such a simple decision. But this isn't about food. This is about a nervous system that is trained to expect danger. Your body doesn't know if the next threat will be screaming, mockery, silence, but it knows something is coming, and you live on high alert in a constant state of hypervigilance, not for physical blows, but for emotional ones, the kind that chip away at you slowly, day after day, until you can't tell where their voice ends and yours begins. And this is why so many women who are stuck in this draining loop, they describe as being tired all the time. Of course, in a draining relationships, the biggest symptom is exhaustion. But this is not just about being physically tired, but mentally exhausted. Imagine being on high alert every hour of every day. Imagine bracing yourself before every small choice, because that's what long-term invalidation does. It steals your energy, it steals your peace, it erodes your confidence. And here's what is most dangerous. It's completely hidden with no visible scars, no obvious bruises. To the outside world, you look capable, organized, maybe even strong. You smile when people ask how you're doing, and no one sees the war you're fighting inside. They don't see the hours you spend arguing with yourself in your head. They don't see how much energy it takes just to send a text or decide what to cook for dinner. They don't see the panic that rises in your chest when someone asks for your opinion, because years of ridicule have taught you that your opinion is flawed. You may think I'm exaggerating, but the women I have worked with have all lived with the same patterns: sleepless nights, panic over small decisions, anxiety that seems to come from nowhere, constant exhaustion, and a voice in their head that whispers that they are always wrong. And what's most destructive isn't the conflict itself, it's what it trains you to do: to become your own critic, to adopt their voice as your own, to silence yourself before anyone else can, to argue with yourself until the loudest enemy in your life is no longer standing in front of you, but is living inside you. That's the real problem. It costs you your trust in yourself. And once you stop trusting yourself, you stop recognizing yourself. And when you have lived in a draining relationship long enough, it's easy to believe that the fight in your head is permanent. That second voice, the one that questions every decision, mocks every instinct, and interrupts even your quietest moments, starts to feel like a part of who you are. But it isn't. Here's what I want to tell you. What feels permanent is actually conditioning, and conditioning can be changed. Studies show that long-term invalidation activates the same areas of the brain as trauma. That's why your body reacts as if every small decision is dangerous, because your nervous system has been trained to expect conflict. Every time you are asked to make a decision, someone is looking at you to make a mistake. But here's the key: neuroplasticity. The brain's ability to rewire itself. The same way your mind was trained to associate choice with danger, it can be retrained to associate choice with freedom. Neural pathways that once fired automatically towards fear can be redirected towards safety, trust, and confidence. And the shifts are real. I've watched clients go from panic attacks over choosing a restaurant to quietly and confidently navigating major life decisions without hesitation. They've gone from lying awake at night, belittling themselves, to experiencing silence in their head for the first time in decades. The change isn't abstract, it's lived. And at first, it feels strange because when your mind has been wired for fear, peace can feel quite unnatural. One of my clients described it as walking into a room where a TV had been blaring for years, only to find it had suddenly been switched off. Her words were that at first it felt almost too quiet, too wrong, but then she realized that this is what calm feels like. And that's how neuroplasticity works. It's not a one-time switch, it's repetition. Each time you make a decision without collapsing into what-if scenarios, your brain lays a new pathway. Each time you trust your instinct, you strengthen it. What feels threatening in the beginning gradually starts to feel normal. And over time, the default shifts from fear to freedom, from doubt to clarity, from exhaustion to energy. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And when it does, the critic loses its grip. You stop hearing their voice in your head and you start hearing your own voice again. And for the first time in years, it feels steady, clear, and trustworthy. But how do my clients get from panic attacks to freedom? What we do, often in a single session, is untangle the knots that are keeping them trapped in the same loop. The knots are the old patterns, the beliefs that convinced them that there was no way out, no other option, no chance of change. When those knots begin to loosen, something starts to shift. A space opens up that they didn't know existed, and suddenly they can see possibilities they couldn't see before. Choices that once felt dangerous start to feel possible. Where they once felt stuck, they begin to feel hopeful. And that is the first sign of freedom. Now, not that everything changes in one day, but the mind is no longer locked in that same corner. They start to believe for the first time in a very, very long time that they have choices other than shrinking themselves, staying stuck, and never being able to change their life the way they want to. But here's what most people don't tell you. Having access to new resources doesn't automatically change your life. The freedom is there, but it only becomes real when you use it. You have to make choices that support you, choices that align with the life that you want to live. Untangling the knots gives you back access to your voice, your thoughts, and your instincts. And when you act from that place, the changes you once thought were impossible start to become your new reality. From the outside, no one sees this transformation at first. They don't know the war you've been fighting in your own head, so they don't understand what it means to have peace. Maybe they think you were always fine because you held it together on the outside. But you know the truth. Surviving and living are not the same. When the critic is gone, you stop surviving and start living. It's not about proving yourself to anyone else. It's not about making the relationship work or fixing the other person. It's about no longer letting their voice run your life. The power of that shift is impossible to explain, but once you know what it feels like to trust yourself again, you don't want to go back. Now, picture this: go to bed at night, you actually sleep. You make choices without collapsing into multiple what ifs, negative scenarios. You wake up with energy that isn't drained by silent battles before you finish your breakfast. It sounds simple, right? But after years of exhaustion, it feels extraordinary. And that's what's waiting on the other side of a draining relationship. Not a perfect life, but a life where your voice is finally louder than theirs, where you no longer live in fear of being wrong because you've learned to trust that you are enough. If you've been living in the cycle, you already know how much it's costing you. What you may still not believe is that it doesn't have to be permanent, but that critical voice in your head can be silenced. Those knots can be entangled. The internal battle can end. I've seen it happen for women who thought they were beyond help. I've seen them rebuild trust, reclaim their voice, and walk back into their own lives with confidence. And if it can happen for them, it can happen for you too. So, my question for you, like always, is: are you ready? Until next time, stay safe and see you in the next episode.